The shop review includes it all. We're gonna review the auction, we're gonna review the gambling, we're gonna review the more gambling, and we're also gonna review the other gambling, so you get where this is going. So, let's have a look. What is worth it? What isn't worth it in the shop? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. Now, starting off in the offer section, these boxes are pretty good if you want to, let's say, spend some gold throughout the year, or for example, if you want to spend some gold in the auction. More on that later, but these are very good containers. If you've got them filled up, they're worth it. Then snow globes, they're not worth it. I mean, you can get the XM66F, but I've reviewed that vehicle already, and it is not worth how much it costs, which is about over 200 euros now. Then there is a Tier 8 tank certificate with a tiger under a tarp. That detail will be relevant later, trust me. No, it's not really worth it because, I mean, 15 euros, yes, for a Tier 8, but the chance of getting an actual good one, somewhat limited because you can end up with something like a Titan Charioteer, a Tier 60, or yeah, an H2BK30. So, don't recommend it. Don't gamble. Gambling is always never worth it. And then these free XP conversions. I mean, if you need free XP, get free XP. Don't buy crates for the 50 millionth time. And there is more crates right here, the mystery boxes and whatever that. It's all just gambling. There is also a draw for the Caliban. Now, the Caliban is a pretty mid vehicle. It's got 1,600 DPM, and it doesn't have any armor whatsoever. But as with any draw, the first two tend to somewhat be okay, like 20 gold for 50k credits, that's okay. And then the second one, I got a pointless, yeah, I just wasted 50 gold. So the draws, don't play them to the end, they're not worth it, but the first one or two, they're still okay. And then, well, more on this thing later. And then, again, don't buy crates, and also don't buy these upgrades that include credits, because that's terrible value. Now, the tank section is looking pretty grim. The Fire and Ice bundle is about as enjoyable as sticking your testicles into a live volcano. Because people are going to ask, why would you do it? It's going to be extremely painful, and you should never do it again. So, the 112 Glacial is about as enjoyable and rememberable as Cornflakes, because it's one of the worser Soviet-style vehicles at Tier 8. There are so much better vehicles, like, for example, the 250U or the Type 57, that are much better than this. And then there's the WZ Blaze, which is, first of all, a Tier 7, second of all, a tank destroyer, and third of all, it doesn't have any armor whatsoever, making it entirely pointless to even look at buying, so not really worth it there. I already talked about the fearless Germans last week, but let's reiterate. Obesity is bad, and this vehicle, it's bad at pretty much everything as well. It's one of the worst performing tanks in the game, so you really don't want this thing at all. Speaking of not wanting it at all, the Brothers in Arms, well, they probably lost their legs a long time ago, but 11 euros for this bundle doesn't really seem too great to me. I mean, it does include 30 times 5, so if you're having some time over the holidays because you have no friends and family, then you can spend that time grinding, for example, an entire tech tree, because 30 times 5s are pretty much enough to go through an entire tech tree if you're good enough. So it can sort of be worth it if you sell this. It's about 1,000 gold for both of them. But generally, there are better bundles available than this. Now, most of the time, whenever you see something describing itself as an alpha, you can pretty much assure yourself that you deal with one of the lowest life forms that humanity has to offer. And that sort of is true for the Alpha Predator certificate as well. It's 20k gold for something. I mean, it does include a tier 10, but you don't know what you're going to get. So, for example, if you like tank destroyers, or if you don't like tank destroyers, you're going to get a Badger. Don't buy this, don't gamble. Actually, buy the tanks for real, for 20,000 gold, because they're often sold like that. And why is there a tiger under that tarp? And if gambling for the snow globes wasn't enough, there is now another gambling event stacked right on top of that includes a total of 3 new vehicles: the Kpz Pr68, the ST62 version 2, and in these boxes, the FV1066 Senlac. Now, whether these vehicles are any good, we're going to have a look at that later. But first of all, how does this event even work? Well, you can get the golden keys from party boxes, and you can get these boxes. Well, with money, you have to buy the keys in the shop. Yeah, we now have the Snow Globe event again with more tanks. So we have the same event twice, basically, and there is more gambling. Yeah. Now let's have a look at this week's auction. Now, the IS-3 Defender is already gone, but don't worry, you don't want that anyway. The Object 260 is generic and mid, so not really great if you want it for the collector value. If you want an IS-7 that has no armor, then that's the vehicle you can get, but generally it's an average vehicle that isn't really worth spending your hard-earned gold on unless you have an absolutely insane amount of gold that you can waste, and you shouldn't waste your gold the Object 260 can be a pick, but other than that, stay away from it. Just like the T-22 medium. I mean, the Kpz 50T kind of makes all the Soviet medium tanks kind of obsolete because it does the same thing, just much better. So T-22 medium, it has a place, and that place is the garbage bin or a collector item when you want a vehicle that was relevant 7 years ago. Now, the ML1951 is a great tank for 4.5k. That is an excellent price. However, it is not quite as good as the regular ML because it just lacks turret armor compared to the regular ML, but it is a great vehicle for that price. Very good. Can highly recommend it. The MX CDA is irrelevant, so let's move on. Kpz 70, it's an average vehicle, selling out pretty quickly, so the next price drop is probably gonna sell it out. So if you do still want this vehicle for the collector value, then go for it. But to make credits, either get a tier 8 or a tier 10. Tier 9 is a weird middle place where you get less credits and less damage, so not really worth it. And this tank, it's average. Like, there's nothing special about it, so only get it if you want the collector value. The WZ-122 TM is terrible, just like the Vindicator UM is very terrible. I mean, if you're some sort of a masochist and you're into it, then that's the only reason why you would ever buy that vehicle. But if you're a normal person that has intellect, then the Vindicator Ultramarines is a very terrible choice to pick up. And that leaves us with 3 left. The Progetto, which is a great vehicle that doesn't have armor and doesn't have standard penetration, but if you know what you're doing, if you're a good player, it is an excellent vehicle to pick up, to play. However, 8.5k, 8k is way too much. It should be around 6k. If it does drop down to 6k when there are still vehicles left, absolutely pick it up, but not for this. If you really, really want it, I guess you can get it overpriced, but now it's not really worth it. The Lancen C is a vehicle that, I mean, for 5k, it's probably going to sell out at that point as well. But it is a vehicle that is very challenging to play, and it's not your main credit grinding vehicle by any means, for any reason, but it is a challenge for a good player. If you're bored with your good tier 8 medium tanks, like your, I don't know, Chimeras, Centurion 5.1s, then this can be an option to torture yourself into enjoying the game again and have a bit of a challenge. Let's go to T56. Why would you get it? Type 57 is better. I hope it pops up eventually, but overall, it's going to drop to 6k, which is going to be solid, but overall, it could have had a 2-shot autoloader like it does in World Tanks PC, but now it's just a generic, shitty, heavy tank that's just pointless. The first vehicle is the... which is basically just the Object 274A, but different. So, is it any good? Well, Wargaming does not like tier 8 medium tanks at all, which makes this vehicle also only have 185mm of penetration, making it terrible. So do you want to buy this vehicle in the shop? Well, for 4,000 gold in an auction for cheap, maybe. Does it have any armor? Well, sort of on the front. The lower plate's a weak spot. It's got very weird shape, so you can get bounces here and there. But overall, it's very mediocre and not really worth purchasing for anything above 5,000-6,000 gold at all. Now, is the Senlac lacking anything? Well, first of all, the option to actually buy it in the shop properly. But other than that, not really. It's a decent light tank that can get around it and do its job pretty well. But obviously, there are other light tanks already in the game that aren't sold at an absurd price in random crates. And given that this is a simple tier 8 light tank that is only really for advanced players because it does have 200 alpha damage and no armor whatsoever, it's not really something that you might want to have from a crate like that. Now, yes, I'm sure there's some people out there that think any vehicle that comes into the game is OP, but price to performance is something that is very important. And in this case, it's just terrible. The vehicle's fine. If it ever comes in the shop, 5,000-6,000 gold, we can certainly talk about it again, but for now, we won't. And lastly, you've already heard me say it twice, it's fine enough. The Kpz Pr 68, it's basically sort of a tier 8 Leopard that's slow and also doesn't have much armor. So, in general, also very difficult to play vehicle. Not that amazing overall. Does it really have any armor? Well, no, it's based on a Leopard. It doesn't really have any armor. So, once again, it is one of those tier 8 medium tanks that you slap into the shop for a cheap price, hoping that someone's dumb enough to buy it, because they are not the primer options that you want to have as your credit grinding vehicles, as your fun vehicles. So with that said, are they worth gambling for? Of course they're not. Neither of the three are special or amazing.